Hello everyone, welcome back to MixBuzzTV mixing and mastering tutorials on YouTube. With this video I want to show you how you can create a believable, good sounding drum room if you happen to have a drum that has been recorded in a dry space, in a small space, something that you can use if you don't have access to a big, good sounding room to record drums in it. And if that's the case, most likely you will have better results creating your own drum room with this trick instead of trying to put room mics in a room that doesn't sound good or is too small, okay? So here's a mix. And this is the drum bass solo, no effects. Is a good sounding drum, but it's fairly dry. So what can we do to give this drum a little more space, a little depth, and to make it sound bigger and to give it a little stereo spread? We're gonna separate the early reflections that we're gonna create from the tail of the reverb. So to have not only more control, but to make the sound more believable. And also I'm going to show you a couple of tricks, some processing that you can do on each different section of the reverb of our drum room. So let's take a look. My drum room is going to the main room stereo aux bus, and then is going also to an early 1 and early 2 stereo auxes. The main room is our main reverb, is our tail. And so you need a reverb where you can take the early reflection out of the equation. In this case, I'm using SSL Xverb, which I love. And as you can see here, you have a control for early and reverb. Okay, so if you put it 100% the reverb, the early reflection are taken out. This is important because we're going to create our own early reflections. So the first thing is we're going to set up our main room, the tail of the reverb. How long is it going to be, what tone is going to be, what algorithm we're going to choose. And let's listen to it. Let's mute the drum, the dry signal. This is just an example. It could be anything else. So immediately we have more space, more depth, and also a little bit of stereo width. And nothing special till here. But here's the first trick. We sent our drum bus to early 1, which is a stereo aux bus. And here I created 2 mono aux tracks, early 1L and early 1R. And in these channels, here I have my SSL channel just for the color. And then I put a delay. Different on each channel, slightly different. 17 milliseconds one, 29 milliseconds the other, but these are just example, you don't have to use these numbers, okay? Then I group the 2 mono aux buses and I pan them -80 and 80 left and right, okay? I didn't pan them hard left and right 100% because that wouldn't be realistic. Is not how we hear things. One thing on the left ear and the other one only on the right ear. Pan these two how you want, narrower or wider, but don't go 100%. And let's listen to this. Without. It's a pretty big difference. And I'm of course exaggerating the volume just to make the effect obvious. But you hear how much nicer is the drum with this subtle space around it. And the level should be set where you don't actually hear it. But when you take it out, you realize that it's not there. And I also EQ'd the 2 delays a little bit cut a little bit of lows and high end. Let's hear them in solo. And you can change it. If you EQ them differently, you're gonna have different results and a different perception. You're gonna perceive the drum more on the left or on the right if you EQ these two differently. More high end is gonna be closer to you. Less high end is gonna be on the other side. And it's a pretty apparent effect, especially if you're listening this on the headphones. It's like you're panning, only you're just using pretty much phase and EQ. It's pretty nice. Let's hear with the drum. If we push it a little more. Listen to the stereo field, how it changes. And it's just EQ. Let's leave it up there for now. So we have our early reflections now, and we can add our main room to taste. Let's pull it down a bit. Let's cut some of the highs. Without. Without the early. And you don't necessarily need the main room if you don't want. You can just use the early reflections. And then an additional processing that you can do with your early reflection is to squash them to death with a brick wall limiter. Why? Because simply the effect is pretty damn cool, and especially on rock drums. Let's hear it. The early reflection. This is without the limiting. Hear how aggressive they get. It's not just level, it's sustain, it's aggression, it's greediness. And in my experience, you can use different processing like saturation or compression, but actually the brick wall limiter is what I prefer because it's nasty. And this kind of effect, I can't replicate it with anything else. Without. Let's hear it with the drum. Without limiting. We're limiting. See? The distortion that it adds, the sustain that it adds, it's very nice. I like this effect on early reflection a lot. Let's set the room. Without limiting. It's a lot more bland without the limiting crushing the earlies. And again, playing with the EQ is gonna be like changing the perspective without touching the pan. So this was the first option. The second option is to send the drum to 2 stereo buses for the early reflections. And in this case, I'm using reverb because, again, you can take away either the early reflection or the tail of the reverb. And in this case, I'm using the early reflections of this reverb to create mine. And I'm using, as you can see, 2 different algorithms. One is room and one is plate. And this, again, gives you a cool effect, in my opinion. And as you can see from my faders, I am panning them in a strange way. One side is -80, one side is straight to the center, and the opposite on the other channel. Let's hear how it sounds. And of course here you get the benefit of the phase shifting because these are 2 stereo buses, and as you can see, panning them differently from hard left right gives you phase cancellation. It has a lot of depth as opposed to our early reflection here. Of course the reverb is different because we are using delays up there, but listen to the effect, the overall depth. Let's hear with the drum. It gets a lot bigger. And we can add our main room if we want. Without. Without the room. It's pretty nice. And of course we can cross the early reflection with the limiter as we did in the other example. Let's try that. I'm using dual mono to maintain the stereo field. Without limiting. You hear it's so much richer with the limiting on the early reflection. And of course, if you want to get crazy, you can open up the delay early reflection too. But yeah, the cool thing for me is actually the trick to crash the early reflection with a limiter. That makes a lot of difference. And of course, you have control on the panning, you have control on the EQ of each early reflection, which is very important. If you go back and listen again, in the part of the video when I move the EQ, you hear the stereo field changing completely. You have a completely different perspective and perception of where the drum in the room is, okay? So this is it for today. I hope this was useful. If you have any question, please send us a message or write it in the comment. We will get back at you. And if you liked the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.